Hello everyone and welcome back to the GeekWave. This is the low budget show. It's the show so low it has no budget. It's been a hot minute since I've done one of these. I miss it. I like podcasting. I consider this podcasting even though it's just more like what I normally do, longer format, but it's fun. It makes me happy. I'd love to get more into this side of stuff, doing some more podcasts, but I don't know. Like, should I get guests and shit? What's the point? I don't have anything new to say that hasn't been said already, so I don't really get if I should, but this is pretty much just a way for me to get my opinions across on things I want to talk about that don't really warrant their own video. So that's where we are. And it probably does warrant its own video because I'm talking about it, and that's enough to make it want its own video, but that's enough rambling. So it's the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel time around. That's right. We're talking about the show. Why? I don't know. Should I have done this when season 4 came out? Probably. Will I come back and talk about the show? Probably, but I just wanted to talk about it. And that's what we're going to do. We are going to talk Marvelous Mrs. Maisel because that's the biggest thing in my life, pretty much. Is that sad? No, it's not, because it's good. But as always, before that, we got a bit of news to talk about. It's been a couple of days since I've been a part of any of this stuff, so there's a few things I would normally talk about on here that I didn't. For instance, Jupiter's Legacy being canceled. I did a video on that. You guys can check it out. It was a very important topic to me, and I'm glad I got my thoughts out about that property. I have a lot to say, so I will link that video. You can check it out on my YouTube channel. It's a very important video, one of the favorite ones I've done recently, so please give that a watch. The Eternals got a trailer. Cool. That's great. But we got some other news to talk about, a couple of casting announcements, some trailers, some dates and things, and basically just a lot of fun. So let's start off with this big piece of casting news that I'm like, okay, I'm on board with this. It's better than any other news they could have said. Timothée Chalamet, the young kid who's been sweeping Hollywood by storm. He's young, but not like super young. He's going to be playing Willy Wonka in the Wonka prequel, Wonka. Well, first off, I love the character of Willy Wonka, just a psychopath lunatic who runs a chocolate factory, kills kids, enslaved people. For some reason, it's fun, and it sounds like a terrible premise, so I think if you're going to do this, and you got a guy like Chalamet seems a little bit more willing to play the butt end of the joke, so he could pull that off too, but I also think there's going to be a lot of lunacy in here, which is going to be fun to explore. I talked about it a while back. I did a video like casting choices. I still think if you were to remake a Willy Wonka movie, Alan Tudyk would be a good choice. But if you want to do a prequel, I like Chalamet. I think he's a better choice than Tom Holland. I don't want to cast Tom Holland in everything, so maybe don't put him in this. So Chalamet, I'm like, that's an actor's actor. So there's a reason he's in here, and I can't wait to see what that's going to be. That's just really exciting to me. Like, it's Chalamet. He's a talent. Dune could make or break him, but he's still talented. Speaking of Dune, I'm just amazed that's still coming out, if I'm being honest. I mean, I think it's going to be boring and stupid and pointless, but that's just me. We'll have to wait and see. We got another bit of casting news that I was like, okay, this one came out of nowhere too. So the Sony Marvel universe of Marvel Sony characters that aren't Spider-Man, but include Spider-Man, because that's all we own. Whatever they're calling that cinematic universe, they're casting up the wazoo, They're making it a thing. A Morbius movie is eventually going to be released with Jared Leto. But coming to us in 2023, we will see the release of a Kraven the Hunter standalone movie with the talented Aaron Taylor-Johnson in the titular lead. Weird choice. I'm like, I get why you would do a Kraven the Hunter movie. Why okay, maybe I don't. Like, is the character that much of a leading man? He seems more just like the over-the-top brutish guy. I could see it if we did it in like the 60s. I think that would be kind of cool, where it's like that macho charisma annoying dude where he's just over the top and like dramatic. Like, those classic films where you got like the guy who's like in the jungle with the ripped shirt saving the girl from the crocodile. If you did that kind of a Kraven movie, I'd like it. But do you really want to see Aaron Taylor-Johnson running around like a city with a weird beard just screaming about what he's hunting? Is he even going to be hunting Spider-Man? Who cares what he's hunting then? I guess it could work if he was maybe hunting Black Cat. That could be interesting. But this is such a weird choice for a movie that I'm like, is it going to pay off? Because I don't know if it will. Whatever. I guess we'll see what happens. But a Kraven the Hunter movie is officially coming at some point in the future. Isn't that weird? What a world we live in where Spider-Man villains are getting movies and that movie's getting a sequel. I'm just amazed by that. Speaking of getting a sequel, the train keeps on rolling for the Evil Dead franchise. For some reason, this thing's been consistently happening since the 80s. I don't understand why. It's been mediocre the entire time, but mediocrity is the point of that franchise, so I'm not going to complain. Evil Dead Rise, it's a sequel. It doesn't have Bruce Campbell. Sure, it doesn't. We'll see him at some point, I'm going to guess. But Raimi's producing. New team behind it all around. Go ahead. Just do it, I guess. I mean, why? Does Evil Dead even make that much money anymore? Because we canceled Ash vs. Evil Dead, and look, the reboot didn't go anywhere, so, like, does this franchise still make money, or is it just, like, we have a story, let's slap Evil Dead on it, and then we'll get at least a little bit more fans in there? It's so weird to me. These are all just, like, weird choices that people make, and I don't get them that much. But what do I know? I'm just some guy who wants to make movies, and I would never make an Evil Dead movie again. It's a dead franchise. I think there's some franchises out there that you're just like, we don't need to go back to that well. I think one of them's things like Lethal Weapon. Like, we don't need to go there again. I would have said Perry Mason, but that Perry Mason show was really good. So I don't know anymore. It's just weird. And let's talk about weirder stuff again, because this is going to probably garner its whole video at some point, but I want to bring it up now. So we got a trailer, or a first look. I don't know if it's the first look, but we got a trailer for the Patrick Star Show. This is the SpongeBob SquarePants spin-off, 20 years in the making. And why does this exist? I know why it exists, because money, and now it's the time for some of this shit, but it's doing that thing that a spin-off does. I call it the Frasier crane, because I think Frasier was the first one to do this, where your character spins off from the successful show, and then they do something in public television or in the public's eye where they're like really famous now. You know, Frasier was the radio host. It looks like Patrick Star might be doing like a talk show / influencer thing. I mean, I don't know who the generation is that's still watching SpongeBob, but it's weird to me it's still happening, and that Patrick Star could lead it, because Patrick is the lovable sidekick. You never give the lovable sidekick the spin-off. You just don't. There's so many other characters I think that could be more deserving. But I guess it could be good. I'll give it some watches and I'll talk about it. But I'm just like, really? This is what we're doing, Nickelodeon? Okay. But speaking of a spin-off that I was very excited for, and I'm like, do this, please, make this happen. When they talked about it, I thought it was a good idea. We got our first trailer for the iCarly reboot. And iCarly is my generation. You know, I've said it, I'm a younger guy. iCarly was there kind of when I was like growing out of watching that kind of stuff, but I watched every episode. I know how it ended, and I think there were some weird choices in there, but the fact that the show is coming back makes me very happy, because this is what I wanted Lizzie McGuire to be. I wanted Lizzie McGuire to be like, we're coming back to this universe. These characters have aged kind of, but they're doing different stuff now. It sucks, but here we are. So iCarly, it looks pretty good. It looks like Carly's going to try to get back into that world of being an influencer, because she was the first influencer, and none of you can tell me otherwise. iCarly started it. Carly started the idea of talking in front of a camera and making that your career. Looks like there's going to be a lot of cool references coming back, which is kind of fun. My biggest complaint, and it's not even that big, but what is up with Freddy's hair? It just looks stupid. I get you're an adult, man, but it's a dumb haircut and you look ridiculous. Maybe it's his mom cutting his hair again. We'll see. But I'm just like, this is a weird choice. It's a choice nonetheless. Okay, let's see what you got. I'm very interested in this iCarly reboot. I might talk about it. I don't know if I'll do like a weekly review of the episodes, but I'll probably do a long formatted video talking about it, because it's genuinely something I'm excited for. I think this is a good idea. You know, I talked about it before. When you decide to go back to like those older properties that were aimed for kids, and then you reboot it for the generation that watched it when you were kids, that is a brilliant idea, because you are growing up with the character you watched on screen and you're making the choices that they're making. That's cool. That is how it should be done. And I love the idea that just Nick is like, yeah, Paramount, let's do it. Here you go, iCarly. It makes sense. If the people want to come back and do it, be my guest and do it. There is absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to be a part of that world again. It's a really smart idea, and I'm glad it's happening. So iCarly, it looks great. Spencer's a baby again. Good job on that. Something else that very, very much excites me is Seth Rogen. You guys know he's done everything for comic books lately. If you like a comic book property on television, it's probably because Seth Rogen produced it to some capacity. He took to Twitter the other day and he showed off his plans for a Ninja Turtle reboot. He's doing a movie. That guy, notorious for the tits and the gore and the blood, he's going to be doing Ninja Turtles, and it's going to be aimed for teenagers, which I really like. So, the reveal was, Leonardo's notepad as if he was in school, which he's not in school. So I'm like, that's kind of a fun way to do it anyways. Maybe, I like the idea of, leaning into the teenager stuff, because there's a lot of ideas you can explore with modern teenageism in, a more contemporary story. So go ahead and do it. We got a release date, August 11th, 2023. That's coming up pretty soon. And that makes me think, when was the last time a Ninja Turtle movie was in theaters? Was it 5 years ago? So it might be 8 years until we get another one, since the last one was in movie, which is kind of exciting. I like it. I'm just genuinely happy to see the Turtles getting more representation, because I know Rise of the TMNT isn't for everyone. I happen to think there's some okay stuff in there. It's just indicative of everything happening in modern cartoons anyway. So if this is going to be unique in its portrayal of the Turtles, that's going to be very exciting, and you can expect more Ninja Turtle talk coming to this channel because of that. I love the Ninja Turtles a lot, and I get some hate for my takes on the Turtles, but it's exciting. I like seeing stuff like this. So, August 11th, 2023, if there's still a world by then, you can damn well be sure I'm going to talk about it. And my final piece of news here, I wanted to end on something kind of positive. I thought it was kind of fun. We got an official kind of confirmation teaser video that Shazam Fury of the Gods is officially starting production, which is kind of fun. It's like there's Zachary Levi standing in the dark. He's like, can we get some lights on? No, you can't. It's production time. A lot of cool actresses coming to be in this property. It's just exciting. And I'm really curious to see how this is going to go. Because the first movie, I think, was really well done. It's one of my favorite superhero movies of the last little while. But a sequel, I think, could tread on, is this going to matter? How much is this going to lean into the Black Adam stuff? Are we going to focus too much on the wrong elements here? How much are the kids going to be in this? Because it seems like we're going to be doing a lot of the gods, so the adults are going to be taking over. We'll see, but it could be fun. David Sandberg's the guy I respect the hell out of, because he started here, he made little short stuff on YouTube, and then he got his movies made, which I think is very fun, and it's something I'd love to try to do too. So thanks, I guess, for showing it can work. But it's fun. Fury of the Gods. I'm very excited to see how this is going to turn out. It's not like one on my radar that I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see what this is going to be, but I'm like, okay, let's see what you got for me. I'm very curious to see what that is. And that's all the news we have. Fun stuff, some stuff I'm just confused about, but a lot of interesting things. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to jump into the world of the 50s and head over to New York to talk Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Like I said at the beginning, you're probably wondering why I'm talking about this show right now, and it's kind of because, I was going through my rewatch again, probably... Oh my goodness, what rewatch would this be for? Maybe the fourth or fifth rewatch of the entire show. I go back and watch this a lot, and I don't really want to get into the spoilers in this video, so I'm like, why am I doing a podcast on this if I don't want to get into these spoilers? But it's just to me, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is the best television has to offer right now. Because I think it is rare that something made from a streaming service just perfectly tells a story that is flawless in every sense of the word. And what I mean flawless, I'm talking about the directing, the writing, the acting, the cinematography, the costume design, the set design. Every piece of this show looks and feels exactly how it's supposed to. And I really just want to talk about that. So I was like, what should I do here? Do I just ramble on about what I love about this show? And essentially I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I want to talk about the things I like, the story, the elements, the way the world portrays itself. Because the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, I honestly think, and I talk about this all the time, because I'm like, how do you encapsulate how you feel about this property? And I think the way I can sum up to you my love for this property would be, when I look at my favorite sort of television, there's three things that always come to mind when I think of my favorite television. The first one is The Simpsons. Love it or hate it, I think The Simpsons is good. The second thing is Seinfeld. Love it or hate it, I think that's good. And then that third thing, when I'm like, what is great television? What is something I enjoy? It's The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which is kind of impressive that a show that started in 2017 has managed to literally encapsulate me that much, where like every time it comes out, I'm like, wow, this just manages to blow me away each time. That's rare for a show that's so recently in its release, and I'm like, that's great. That's something you don't see a lot of, because I like modern television a lot, and there's certainly a lot of great television now. I think more so than ever, streaming has really blurred the lines between television and film, which is both beneficial and harmful to the genre as a whole. But I think the way The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel presented itself was really impressive. So I was one of the lucky few who watched the pilot when they did like their voting thing. So the pilot for Mrs. Maisel, they shot it before the rest of the show, of course. And if you are just to like make that pilot, say, an extra 40 minutes, you have a really solid film, because that opening pilot is so incredible and poignant and interesting, and it sets up the tone perfectly. You meet this girl, Midge Maisel, who is just the most interesting and funny and thought-provoking character in a show like this that you've seen in a long time. And just like having her go through the navigation just in that first episode alone is really fascinating, because she's just like the perfect person. Everything's working out for her. She's willing to support her husband. She's willing to do everything that her parents want of her. She's happy. She's quietly enjoying herself in the way that a woman in that time period would. And then as soon as the tables turn, even in the slightest, you see that like it's not just that she wasn't happy in there, it's that she didn't know she couldn't be unhappy, and she is unhappy, and suddenly everything breaks down, and that just makes the show that much better. Honestly, Rachel Brosnahan, how she performs on this show is incredible, considering how young of a talent she is, because she holds her own as somebody who feels like they're timeless. And I find that really rare in modern actors and actresses, where you find someone who is just so like you can fit in any time period and make it work. And just being able to pursue that entire genre is so great to see. I'm so happy that she was cast in this, because she knocks it out of the park every time. So, some of you might be listening to this and you don't really know what The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is. So, I'll sum it up to you very loosely here. We open up this show, this woman named Midge Maisel, Miriam Maisel. She's married to this great guy named Joel. Everything's happy. Joel wants to be a comic. But, he's not that good at it. He steals other people's bits, and when he realizes his life isn't what he wants, he admits to his wife that he had an affair, and slowly Mitch starts to realize that her life is never going to be the same again, and the only way she can, let out her anger and vent to anybody is when she's on the stage. Did I mention this is set in the 1950s, which is a great backdrop for a story like this? It adds so much more to the story having it in the 50s. It's really good. And I think just that alone, that concept, a housewife in the 50s is angry at her husband, so she goes on stage to become a comic. That on its own could sell you a movie, get a script, you can have anything you want from that, because it's that solid of a premise. And the fact that this show is good is really amazing. It really is. Because, I say it every time, I say this all the time for some reason, but a lesser talent could make this a lot worse of an idea, but it balances the humor really well, and that's something I think is very important about this show, is that the humor lands on every form of humor. When you go up to do the stand-up, I think this is a very fascinating thing, especially for people who study and are comedians or comics that go do the circuit, the tours every time. It's really interesting to see how comedy itself is portrayed on film, because it's unless you have an actual stand-up writer working on your project, the stand-up sometimes comes across as false or inaccurate and doesn't really feel right. And that's why I think when you do something like this, it's important to get the comedy that the comic is saying right. And this show, it works really well. It's very much this is the humor that you would be making in the 50s. It's a little more racy and sexual and risque at times, but it's still the humor that somebody in that time period would be making. And I think that's really incredible. You actually had you probably looked at a bunch of old stand-up bits from that time period, and you worked around that to make it a little more a television program making a comics dialogue would be, and it just worked really well. So The fact that a show about comedy and being a stand-up comedian can make the jokes that the comedian is saying on stage actually funny is important. But the jokes that they're saying offside the stage, when it's just like the offhanded remarks that the family is making, that is incredible to me, because one thing I really love is like that fast-paced joke where the energy just is there. You don't have to wait for the joke. You just ride it. You just let it ride out. You let it play out. Let the scene go. Just let the joke talk naturally. I think that's a very impressive feat to do, and not everything can pull it off perfectly, but just the way like each piece of dialogue is perfectly choreographed and scripted just works perfectly for the tone of this show, and every joke lands. You're not getting a big laugh each time, but you can't watch this and not be impressed with the way that the laughter and the humor just exudes from the stage and from the script. Everything about that is perfect, so elegant and funny and fascinating. And before we continue on with some of the other stuff, I want to bring up something I really enjoy about this show, and that is the way it uses real-life stand-up comedians and all that world pretty much. Like, there's certain things where you're like, this isn't a real person, this is kind of falsing it up, and you're playing with the tropes of that, but the way this show, in its earlier seasons, portrayed the character of Lenny Bruce, I think is incredibly cool. Lenny Bruce is just one of those guys where I think you have to understand what he's about to fully grasp what he does. So I like seeing him in this show and the way he plays off Midge and in this world. It's very fascinating to see what he is capable of becoming. I really like seeing that. It just added extra stuff to that character. And Lenny Bruce, he's a funny guy. So just having him in this world, it works. And he has one of my favorite lines in all of, I think, television. You know, in one of the earlier episodes, I think it's the first episode actually, when Midge asks him, like, do you love it? Like, do you like doing comedy? And he gives that amazing speech where it's like, it's a twisted job and I don't think anybody would do it. If there's anything else in the world I would do that over this piece of shit job. And she's like, do you love it? And he just kind of shrugs like, hey, I have to. I'm here. That is one of my favorite just scenes ever. It's just so interesting and fun to see that. It's that is this show. It's just like, hey, it's going to get dark. It's going to get intense. It's going to be dramatic. You might cry. You might feel serious emotion for this, but we're going to shrug it off, tell your joke, and have fun. You're going to see a world being built, and it's going to be so intensely interesting and riveting at every turn that you're never going to know what's coming next. I thoroughly enjoy that. It's such a strong idea, a strong characterization, and something I'm just impressed with at every turn. Like, this show's amazing. So it's 3 seasons in. Each season is 8 episodes long, and it doesn't go longer than it needs to. It just perfectly gets its show done in those 8 episodes. It's so fascinating to me that the show is able to be consistent through that. The first season is all about getting the comedy situated. The story is pretty much, we're going to get Miss Maisel to do her comedy bit. That's pretty fun. The second season's my favorite, if I'm being honest with you guys. Like, I just think it's like, okay, we're getting it built up more. We're going to have some more fun in the time period. We're going to go to the Catskills and do this weird, interesting stuff. And then the third season's like, we're in full swing, baby. We're making our jokes. We're having our fun. We're letting you show the benefits of the world that you've rid with us for the past 2 seasons. And the way those all combine is really fascinating. So let's spend a couple minutes here talking about some of the characters that are in this world, because they are very fascinating. We talked about her for a bit here, but Miriam Maisel is such a great lead. I just think she is just perfectly everything of that time period. You know, she is the woman of the 50s. She's the domestic housewife. She'll do all that good stuff, have all that fun, and she is willing to say the things that need to be said at the time period, which I really like. You know, she'll go to women's marches and speak up like, oh, this is weird. Like, why are you doing this? She'll be like, she'll try to be the perfect housewife. She'll do all that right, proper stuff that she's supposed to, but she'll also do the funny comedic bits, and it works so incredibly well. One of the things I love about this show, too, is the use of the costumes. You know, I love the set design and all that stuff, but the costumes are great. In particular, I think Rachel Brosnahan has some of the best looks on screen. Every time you just see her with a new outfit or a new ensemble, it just perfectly works. Everything about it is gorgeous and flat and just so good for that character in that world. She's great. Honestly, The way she's able to act her ass off in this show is incredible because she has like the poise and properness of, a woman that grew up to say, hey, you should just be a wife. And then it's like, hey, now you're becoming your own person. You're having your own thoughts and feelings and you're expressing that in your portrayal of stuff. There's so many great moments and her range is incredible. Like I said, it's impressive that such a young talent could pull this off as well as she did. I really like the way Rachel handles herself in this show. It's very fascinating, very great. And if I don't talk about her enough in this video, it's just like, well, there's so many other great characters in this show, and it's just so weird. And I was like, is Rachel the best actor in the show? Probably, but I gotta talk about Susie Meyerson because Alec Borstein, what a woman. Like, she is just the perfect character. If you think like prim and proper Midge Merriam, just the perfect person, you come over to Susie, this gruff-looking, tough-speaking lady from the wrong side of the tracks who's just angry, just pissed off at everything. She'll speak her mind. She'll act tough. It's great. It is so great. And this being one of the first times I've really seen Alec Borstein work, it's just great. Now, of course, I've seen her work. She's been an incredible voice actress for years, but just having her in this scene, it's so cool. She's just such a great talent, and just having the ability to play like that is such a unique experience that I don't think she gets to do enough, because you look at this, you're like, oh, that's the woman from Family Guy, and then it's like, no, she's a genuine actress. She can work her ass off here, and it all works perfectly. That's pretty cool to see. And her character is just fantastic. Just absolutely fantastic. So let's talk about Joel Maisel for a sec. Michael Zegan, who I haven't seen him in anything before this or since, but man, this guy, just like with Rachel Brosnahan, this is such an underrated talent that is such a performance for a leading actor that I love. Joel is such a complex character. He's one I really like because when we first meet him, he's just like, I'm unhappy, and he's slowly trying to figure out what it is that makes him happy, what he has to do to get there. And through, he is the proper young guy who's doing the right thing. Maybe not by his family at first, but he wants to be the right guy in the end. And I like seeing that. I really do. Joel's character could easily become like that one-note thing where you're like, oh, I don't like Joel. He's doing the bad stuff. He's the bad friend. He's the bad husband. He's coming around a lot. He's doing the right thing. He's trying to get his life together for his family, for his kids, which is a very enjoyable aspect of the show. I just like the way he's able to handle himself and portray his character. I enjoy that. Joel's such a fascinating character to me, and one that I'm glad they're given the opportunity to play with. They're giving him as much to do as they do with Miriam, which I enjoy seeing. I think that is very fun. Again, Rose Wiseman, Maren Hinkle, she is just like, when you get Maren Hinkle in here, you know what you're having her do. You're having her play that character she is known for. Same with Tony Shalhoub, which I'm just like, these people. I mean, I love Abe and Rose. They're just those great parents of the era where everything's overbearing, overprotective, but still like keeping up the idea or like the allure that everything is perfectly fine. They are just perfect representations of what you're supposed to act in that time period. I just love it. I think they are perfect. And Tony Shalhoub's Abe Weissman is one of my favorite characters in this thing. He might be my favorite, actually, just because I relate to the crotchety old man who feels stressed out by everything and every little thing starts to affect him in a way. I enjoy that a lot. Monk really made this guy popular, didn't it? I like that show. I like that he's getting more work every day. This is such a great role. Great performance. Every part of the cast works so well. I'm just like, you're doing it great. And I think something that surprises me is that they don't really do like the celebrity comic cameo. A couple times they do, Gilbert Gottfried was in there once. You have a couple people show up, and of course some like famous comedians show up. Jane Lynch is there for a bit. She might be like the only big one really, and her character's role is pretty fun, but they get some great side guests in here. Like your character Sterling K. Brown had a great arc in the third season. He's playing that different kind of character than what he's normally seeing. I think Zachary Levi is a great actor to fit into this world. He is just like a guy in that time period who would honestly be looking for the different thing in a woman, and I like seeing that a lot. I just think it's really cool how he's able to play off that different type of role. I really do enjoy that. The show, it works on so many conceivable levels, and it just leaves me speechless every time I see it. There's just so much to play with, so much interesting backstory and character and these works, and I recommend it to everyone because there's something you can like in each scene. If you want to like get into like the drama of this, because you could explore this in a way where it's like a drama talking about comedy, which is such a fascinating idea and something I really enjoy seeing, because each character has like those satisfying emotional beats where you see them going through actual arcs. They have emotion and feeling, and they have to come into their own and do these right things. You feel for Midge in a lot of the areas she does, even when she's trying to do the right thing. You feel it. And when you see Susie get into those areas where she needs extra help and she's looking for that help and that longing and she's losing control at certain things, you feel for those moments too. There's just so much good in here I love. And if you just want like that high, fast-paced comedy, like an Aaron Sorkin thing, that's all over the place. Some of the best stuff in this show is just when it's people in a hallway or people in a room just talking in just together, when you have like the group of everyone coming together and they're just like bouncing off each other, saying these things that's very clearly scripted, but the scripting feels so natural. It's such a good sense of fun and interesting nature. If you're in somebody who just likes a period piece, this plays with the concept of the late 50s really well. Like the stuff women have to go through in that time period, the stuff that's kind of sacrilegious that you don't really talk about, that you don't explore, the way like the police treat comedy, the way the world treats comedy, the way it's still this underground thing as opposed to now, you know, the way like you work with certain people, the way women present themselves. One of the best things in the pilot is when Miriam goes to bed with her husband all dressed up. She gets up later, takes off all her makeup, makes herself look pretty, goes back to bed, wake up before him and makes herself look pretty. So he always thinks she looks that good no matter what. Even when they've been together like that for a long time, she still doesn't have that security to show him her true self, which is such a fascinating area to explore. Like, it's the 50s, and we play with that as a character, as a theme in here. We do these interesting concepts and things. There's just so many particular things in this show that work so well to just show exactly what this kind of property could be, what it's trying to explore. The comedy works unbelievably well. The story is absolutely fun. And there's just certain moments that work really well. I'm going to talk about a few of them here, like things that I really like. You know, there's just so much to get into, and this is the recommendation. There isn't going to be any like recommendations at the end of this video, because my recommendation to you is just exploring this show and seeing it for what it is. It's only 27 episodes, and I think each episode serves itself really well. You get a great sense of the story and the characters and the humor. Everything comes together in this beautiful bow and works really well. These are a bunch of actors that probably some of you aren't too familiar with, but when you just see the way they can play off each other and do great story, it's really incredible. So much great stuff just appears in this show, and I want people to explore this and cherish it and see what this can be, because there's so much uniqueness to a show like this that just gets lost sometimes, and I don't want this to get lost. And I know what you're saying. It's won awards. Yeah, it has. It's won plenty of awards. But nobody's talking about it. Even on its hiatus, you know, people were talking about things like Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones. But when this is gone, it just feels like nobody talks about it enough. And I want people to talk about this. I want this to be in like the popular zeitgeist forever. Just something that's always going to be up and having the conversation, because it's unique. It's unique that every single part of a show perfectly works, you know. Every little moment matters and has some development to it, and every joke lands, every character has their arc, every story beat works, the time period makes sense, the costumes are perfect, the comedy works on every beat. It's rare to see that in a show like this. It's just really impressive. So, like, there are particular moments I think are really enjoyable, and I'm not going to get into every single one of them. I just want to bring up a couple of things I really like, some certain story arcs, kind of, some certain beats that I enjoy. Like I said, the Catskills arc where the family goes to the Catskills, a very cool place to explore. It added for a lot of new diverse looks and some characters. It's where we meet Benjamin, and he became a really cool standout to me. I love the scene when Abe and Miriam go to Paris to find Rose, and then Miriam does her stand-up bit. We have the translator keeping up with her. That scene alone, I talk about it a lot. That scene alone, when Miriam is in France and she is talking, she's doing her bit, and the translator is talking over her as she continues talking. It's just like that fast pace, like two people. That is such a hard concept to get behind, and it's so perfect that they made it work. It's one of the few things that always sticks out to me about that show as something that just perfectly sums up what it is. I enjoy that immensely. I think the pilot episode is incredible. I love the stuff with Miriam and Lenny Bruce when they go to was it the Playhouse party? I can't remember if that's what it was called. That stuff was really good. There's a great moment in the second season when Midge is doing her stand-up bit and her father sees it and she kind of breaks down doing this weirder comedy bit, but it still sounds like the comedy bit she would be doing. And it's just so impressive. Like those kind of things. You just fully get what this is. There's so much great stuff in every single part of this. The arc where Joel starts to open up a club in Chinatown, I think is really funny, really fun. It's so rare that every part of a thing like this works and that you can just enjoy it over and over again. It's really rare that a modern show that's been around for less than 5 years at this point is something I could go back and watch at any point in time where I'm like, I don't need to go back and see that. I saw it recently, but I'm like, I could watch The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel on repeat for a long time and pick up new things and get new ideas of the comedy and the story. I could see new expressions from the actors and pick up these different details. It's just really rare that a show has you feeling that way and exploring that stuff. And the fact that it does is super impressive to me. It's rare that modern TV can do this. Even more rare that a show about comedy and like women in comedy can be so good. And I'm glad that this show opened up people's audiences to more obscure female comics, because I think that's something it did. It's like you see the jokes that Midge is making on stage and you could be like, okay, well, what is this a reference to in the time period? Because obviously there was like Lenny Bruce and all those comics of that time. What other female comedy comics were in there too, just doing their thing that we don't know about, and that now their story could potentially be told because you can see The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and be like, oh yeah, that could come from here. That could be a part of this. I think that's fantastic. And that's something we should applaud the show for doing, is just giving us a new view on comedy and female comics in the 50s. And the arc with Jane Lynch and her story as a female comic in that era, it's really good too. I think that's just like, you have to be a certain way in this world to get by that way. And I get that completely. It's just so well made at every turn. It's one of the few shows I adore everything about, and it's just perfect. I could sit here and talk about it all day, all night, and just get new beats to bring up, but I think let's just say, let's end with this. What do I want to see in season 4? Because we ended the third season on a really interesting note where Midge just kind of like kicked off her tour, and Joel's going to open up his club. So what I want to see in season 4 is kind of a time jump. I want to see Joel's club up and running, doing the right thing there. I want to see maybe Midge trying to get back on her feet. I think that could be really cool to explore. I would maybe like to see, maybe we could do some more stuff with Ethan, because he hasn't really done much and he's going to be getting older now. So maybe we could get the kid trying to do something. Maybe he learns something about his mom. Maybe he realizes his dad does something. That could be fun. And I could definitely see Abe going down the route of more like experimental stuff in his newspaper, and maybe Abe tries comedy and he can't figure out how to do it right, or he doesn't understand the same principles as that, so he tries to learn from his daughter or do the right thing there. And that's a great scene too, where Abe goes to see Lenny Bruce's skin. He's like, this guy's just speaking the truth. Why are we like going to arrest him for saying like the truth, for like having freedom of speech? That's such a good moment too. So I can see stuff with that happening for Abe. I think that could be really fun. And then Susie, I'd imagine, is going to get either more clients or get into more trouble somewhere with her debt. I mean, it's really incredible what this show did. It's really incredible, and it's so strong a show. And again, I'll end it with this, guys. It's 27 episodes. It is 3 seasons, about 40 to 50 minutes a pop. And you are going to get a new experience and a new treat with every episode you watch. It is that poignant and funny and fascinating. And you're going to get a new appreciation for people like Alex Borstein, Tony Schlub, Baron Hinkle, and newcomers Michael Zegan and Rachel Brosnahan are just going to blow you away with what they are able to do, this being like their first really big thing. It's very impressive and very strong. Just watch the pilot episode. If you don't want to continue watching any of that, you have a great thing that can work as like a short film. If you want to watch more, please do, because the more people that watch this show, the more we get stuff like this being made. So I love The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and I want you guys to love it too. So please check it out on Amazon Prime. It is worth your time. It is worth the effort. It is worth everything you love about comedy. It is just that in spades. I am telling you, it is worth your time. It is so good, and I can't keep talking about it, but I gotta stop eventually, so why not stop while I'm ahead? there's your recommendation for this week. Just watch the show, please, and then come back and talk about it here. We'll have a good time with it. Thank you. Goodbye. So thank you guys for watching this episode of GeekWave. And if you're listening to this on the podcast feed, please give us a rating there. It definitely helps out. As always, you guys can check me out on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, all that good stuff. And if you have any recommendations for a video you'd like to see me do or a topic you'd like to see me explore on the GeekWave, please leave them in the comments below. Email them to me. You guys know that. It's all in the descriptions. You can find it there. And of course, I'm going to end things there. So have fun, guys. Stay safe. And good luck.